Alexa, what are the latest news from the Caribbean Television Network?
From Caribbean Television Network News. Even in his inability to lead, Ariel Henry enjoys the support of the United States. From Zoom Haiti News Daily. The Assistant Secretary of State for International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs, Todd D. Robinson, reiterated the United States' support for the Haitian government in the fight against insecurity.
Zoom Haiti News, français. L'ex-ministre de l'Agriculture, des Ressources naturelles et du Développement rural, David Nicolas, est mort.
En Zoom Haiti News español, el gobierno de Biden agradece la colaboración de las autoridades haitianas en la gestión del expediente de migrantes irregulares devueltos al país.
Zoom Haiti News et Caribbean Television Network, plus de 10 sites internet, en anglais, français, espagnol et plus d'une centaine d'autres langues. Désormais, vous n'avez plus besoin d'un ordinateur ou d'un téléphone portable. Il suffit de demander à Alexa.
Alexa, what are the latest news from the Caribbean Television Network?
From Caribbean Television Network News. From Zoom Haiti News Daily.
En Zoom Haiti News, français.
En Zoom Haiti News español.
Caribbean Television Network, en français, anglais et espagnol. Vous pouvez aussi télécharger les applications de Zoom Haiti News en créole, français, anglais et espagnol. Visitez notre site internet sur www.caribbeantelevisionnetwork.com. Chaque jour, branchez Zoom Haiti News à Caribbean Television Network sous Roku à Amazon TV Fire. Ou à nous tous sous ZHN Live à CNT Live dans Roku à Amazon TV Fire. Ou pas gain télévision? Al droite sous Apple Store ou bien Google Store, téléchargez l'application Roku. L'offre télécharger l'application ça, ou chercher ZHN Live. Ou à même channel ça tout dans Amazon TV Fire. Pas hésiter à abonner à la chaîne YouTube nous. Et puis suivez nous tous sur Facebook dans Zoom Haiti News à Caribbean Television Network.
Si je dis ça très bien. Donc, c'est un plaisir de vous avoir aujourd'hui. Vous êtes sur Caribbean Television Network. Dites-moi à quel sentiment vous participez à ce sommet aujourd'hui qui réunit environ presque une cinquantaine de chefs d'État africains.
En fait, c'est un grand événement. On a réuni les dirigeants des pays africains pour poursuivre quelques objectifs clés, c'est-à-dire pour amplifier les voix africaines dans leurs propres affaires et dans les affaires internationales, pour approfondir aussi les relations entre les États-Unis et les pays africains, et aussi pour mobiliser les moyens et les agences et la totalité du gouvernement américain, et aussi le secteur privé et la société civile, pour essayer de faire face aux défis communs actuels mondiaux.
Les défis dans la région africaine sont énormes, et le changement climatique, les problèmes économiques et la sécurité notamment. Et vous avez entendu bien évidemment les dirigeants africains dans les réunions qui ont eu lieu avec le secrétaire d'État américain. Qu'est-ce qu'ils devraient espérer en termes de changement et après ce sommet?
Nous prenons au très sérieux les défis auxquels les pays africains font face, en particulier le changement climatique. Et c'est pour ça que le gouvernement américain a lancé des efforts et des fonds et des ressources pour poursuivre des technologies vertes et des solutions, et aussi pour promouvoir la résilience face au changement climatique chez les peuples africains. Et récemment, on a vu hier l'annonce d'un nouveau volet de fonds, 55 milliards de dollars, pour poursuivre, entre autres, cette résilience et ces solutions aux problèmes liés au changement climatique.
Il y a eu des compréhensions, on pourrait dire ça comme ça, concernant la façon dont les fonds sont décaissés pour l'Afrique. C'est vrai, les États-Unis s'engagent à aider dans plusieurs domaines, dont le changement climatique et l'économie. Il y a des dirigeants africains qui avaient critiqué, si on pourrait dire comme ça, et la façon dont les fonds sont disposés donc, par les ONG, est-ce qu'il y a un changement qui va être fait? Les dirigeants seront beaucoup plus en charge des fonds ou bien des projets qui seront exécutés dans la région. Donc je ne fais pas vraiment de particularité pour un pays.
Nous ne sommes pas là pour faire une comparaison avec d'autres pays qui ont eu des relations avec les pays africains. Nous sommes là, si vous voyez l'agenda par exemple, il n'y a pas de session sur la Chine, il n'y a pas de session sur la Russie. Ça concerne les relations bilatérales entre les États-Unis et les pays africains. Et notre façon de travailler, c'est toujours de trouver des partenariats avec les pays africains et aussi avec les institutions et les organisations régionales et internationales qui luttent aussi pour résoudre les conflits et les autres problèmes sur le continent. Nous essayons toujours de travailler, de trouver des partenaires et de travailler par nos partenaires, à travers de nos partenaires, parce que vous connaissez beaucoup plus que nous le terrain, vous connaissez les problèmes et vous avez vos solutions préférées, vous avez des idées pour des concepts pour les adresser et nous cherchons à trouver ces solutions en commun avec vous.
Le sommet est lancé officiellement aujourd'hui. Il y a environ 50 pays qui sont invités et ont répondu présent. Est-ce que vous considérez ce sommet comme un grand succès et considérez le nombre de pays ayant répondu à l'appel?
Moi, je suis encouragé par la réponse qu'on a eue des invités, des partenaires, des pays qui sont invités. Point de vue des invitations, les États-Unis ont trouvé en partenariat avec l'Union africaine
une solution pour les invitations. Chaque pays qui n'a pas été suspendu par l'Union africaine a été invité. Il y a quelques exceptions. Par exemple, il y a l'Érythrée n'a pas de relations diplomatiques au niveau de l'ambassadeur. Il n'y a pas d'échange d'ambassadeurs et c'est pour ça qu'on n'a pas invité un chef d'État ou bien un représentant. Et autrement, on a invité quelqu'un de chaque pays. À Zimbabwe, où le président est sous sanction. Et c'est pour cette raison qu'il n'a pas été invité. Mais pour le reste du continent, l'invitation est quasi universelle, en fait. Et nous avons pris notre conseil de l'Union africaine premièrement.
Et donc, est-ce que vous pouvez confirmer combien de pays ont répondu? J'ai dit environ une cinquantaine, donc sur les 54 pays. Donc, est-ce que vous pouvez confirmer? Vous avez une idée du nombre exact?
Le nombre exact, je ne peux pas préciser à ce moment-là, mais on commence à avoir une idée. Et c'est une réponse très encourageante. En fait, je viens de voir une liste, mais malheureusement, je n'ai pas eu le temps de vraiment tailler combien de pays et à quel niveau ils ont répondu. Mais la plupart des chefs d'État restent à venir, restent à arriver entre aujourd'hui et jeudi. Ça sera la grande journée pour les interventions des chefs d'État. Alors, on va voir, mais je crois que la majorité d'entre eux, ils vont venir.
Il y a certains pays africains qui ont fait beaucoup de succès et ont bénéficié beaucoup du support des États-Unis. Je parle de la Somalie et d'autres pays qui ont fait des efforts considérables en termes d'économie et d'infrastructure. Est-ce que vous souhaitez que le modèle somalien ou d'autres pays en Afrique, sud-africains, pourrait être répliqué dans d'autres pays africains afin qu'on ait une Afrique beaucoup plus prospère?
Vous savez, il y a des problèmes économiques dans plusieurs pays africains, mais nous mettons toujours le point sur le fait comme vous savez, le business international cherche toujours la croissance. Et il n'y a pas de région au monde où on va trouver un taux de croissance supérieur à celui de l'Afrique. Et l'Afrique est une zone très intéressante pour attirer l'investissement. Il faut simplement débloquer les choses, les facteurs qui empêchent à ce que cet investissement va entrer dans les pays. Par exemple, de chercher la confiance, point de vue bonne gouvernance, point de vue démocratie, institution, état de droit. Avec tout ça, la potentialité est énorme.
Je sais qu'on s'est entendu, donc on ne va pas parler d'Haïti. Moi, je suis d'Haïti, mais vous connaissez Haïti très bien. Un mot pour
comment il est
peuple haïtien, une salutation spéciale quand même.
Kenbe Red, Palagay, Bourrique chargé, pas compé.
Merci beaucoup, M. Schmonsees, ça a été un plaisir.
Merci à vous.
Put on your interpretation. Okay. So, Mr. President, we know that you have considered deeply the question, how is governance impacted by security? How can peace be sustained, especially in the context of violent extremism? Which channel is? Wonderful. Okay, let's start again. So the question, Mr. President, is that we know that you consider deeply the question of how is governance impacted by security? How can peace be sustained, especially in the context of violent extremist non-state actors in the region impacting Niger? Please, sir, share your thoughts on these two questions.
Reprenez, s'il vous plaît. Reprenez-vous. Merci, madame. Je voudrais remercier les autorités américaines pour l'occasion qu'elles nous ont donnée de nous adresser à un public divers à l'occasion de panels au cours desquels nous prendrons la parole. Sur les questions de sécurité, moi je viens de la région du Sahel, qui est en effet depuis 10 années à peu près, un peu plus certainement, affecté par un phénomène de violence tout à fait caractéristique qui prend différentes formes, mais qui se ressemblent toutes selon les pays et qui a tendance à s'étendre parce que on se souvient au départ qu'il était parti seulement du nord du Mali, mais qu'aujourd'hui cette menace a atteint bien d'autres pays. Je voudrais expliquer que la violence dans le Sahel, elle procède de la combinaison d'un certain nombre de facteurs à caractère structurel, d'autres contingents. C'est une zone qui est parmi les zones du monde la plus impactée par le phénomène du changement climatique, qui a remis en cause un certain mode de vie qui avait cours, plus précisément le mode de vie pastoral, l'élevage pastoral, du fait de l'aménagement de la biodiversité, a eu pour effet de réduire les pâturages, de réduire les ressources naturelles. Et la zone du Sahel se caractérise en même temps, malheureusement, par une croissance démographique très élevée. Et il y a comme un aménagement de l'espace concédé à la pratique de l'élevage pastoral, une tension sur les ressources naturelles entre agriculteurs et pasteurs, une tendance de l'agriculteur à conquérir des territoires qui étaient affectés à l'élevage, une autre tendance contraire des éleveurs à mesure que les ressources ne suffisent pas au nord à descendre vers le sud. Et ça crée un écosystème de tension qui est très caractéristique de cette zone. Je parlais de la croissance démographique que je lie à la perte d'efficience des systèmes scolaires qui n'ont pas joué leur rôle régulateur en matière de démographie comme cela s'est passé ailleurs au monde. Partout au monde où la mortalité infantile a été réduite, la natalité aussi s'est réduite parce qu'entre les deux, il y a eu l'école qui a joué ce rôle de régulateur. Les enfants vont à l'école, acquièrent de connaissances, se trouvent ouverts d'esprit, ont de l'emploi, et ça fait que la société s'industrialise, cesse d'être rurale, et les pratiques certaines pratiques, certains comportements de forte natalité cessent d'avoir cours. Au Sahel, c'est vrai que les politiques de vaccination généralisée, les politiques de prophylaxie contre certaines maladies qui tuent beaucoup les enfants ont été réduites. Mais ça ne s'est pas suivi de façon, ça n'a pas été corrélé à un phénomène qu'on a vu partout au monde, de baisse de natalité. Et cette croissance démographique est une des raisons aussi de la situation de tension qui a cours dans le Sahel. En plus de cela, il faut se souvenir que depuis les années 2000, des groupes terroristes algériens se sont installés dans le nord du Mali, ont développé une économie criminelle, ont développé un autre écosystème ici, et c'est sur fond de cette situation générale qu'il y a eu la chute du régime de Gaddafi et qu'il y a eu beaucoup d'armes qui se sont déversées dans le Sahel, et le groupe terroriste naguère basé uniquement dans leur sanctuaire du nord du Mali ont essaimé un peu plus au sud dans ce pays. Puis nous avons assisté à la naissance du phénomène terroriste Boko Haram. Ce sont ces groupes-là qui sont devenus les monstres contre lesquels nous sommes en train de lutter aujourd'hui. Et nous, au Niger, je réponds à cela avec précision à votre question, nous avons considéré que ce fléau, pour y faire face, il faut combiner diverses actions. La première, c'est de promouvoir malgré tout. Et pour cela, justement, nous avons un défi devant nous. Il s'agit de promouvoir la démocratie, de promouvoir l'état de droit, le respect des droits de l'homme, sans désemparer, malgré les contraintes, même si nous réservons une part de plus en plus importante aux besoins de notre sécurité. Sur le plan politique, nous n'avons pas demandé de cet objectif. Nous combinons cela avec un renforcement des capacités de notre armée. Nous avons recruté plus de militaires et plus de forces de sécurité intérieure. Nous avons noué des alliances au niveau du lac Tchad, ce que nous appelons la force mixte multinationale avec nos partenaires du Tchad, du Cameroun et du Nigeria, et le G5 Sahel avec nos partenaires des pays du Sahel, le Tchad, le Niger, le Mali, le Burkina et la Mauritanie. Nous avons aussi développé des partenariats avec nos amis, le gouvernement des États-Unis d'Amérique, le gouvernement français, les gouvernements des pays européens de façon générale, qui nous ont permis de renforcer les capacités de notre armée en mettant l'accent sur la formation des forces spéciales qui ont des compétences qui sont tout à fait en adéquation avec les exigences de combat que nous menons. Nous avons eu la possibilité d'acquérir des équipements qui ont permis à notre armée de créer les conditions d'un rapport de force qui nous a permis justement de ne pas sombrer, parce que les pays qui n'ont pas été en mesure de créer ces conditions ont vu leurs institutions ébranlées et ont été victimes de coups d'État militaires tout simplement, ce qui a totalement désorganisé ces pays-là et les a mis dans une situation où ils sont plus en difficulté qu'ils n'étaient lorsque l'armée avait pris prétexte de difficulté à faire face aux terroristes pour organiser des coups d'État contre les régimes démocratiques. Nous avons créé donc les conditions d'un rapport de force militaire sur cette base que je viens de vous indiquer. Nous avons continué à promouvoir la démocratie et l'état de droit et sur le terrain qui est impacté par les agissements de groupes terroristes à nos frontières, nous avons mis en place une institution que nous avons appelée la Haute Autorité à la consolidation de la paix, que nous avons chargé de créer les conditions d'un dialogue entre les communautés, parce que les terroristes qui ont pris pied dans cet espace-là n'ont pas vocation à créer une administration et à gérer un État. Ce n'est pas leur objectif. Ce sont des excroissances de Daesh, ISIS et de Al-Qaïda, qui sont toutes des organisations qui sont au Proche-Orient.
Mr. President, thank you. We're going to come back to those issues. I think that you've given us a lot to think about, and especially your emphasis on the nexus between governance and countering violent extremism. So we will certainly return to this topic in the course of today's forum discussion, but thank you for making that strong point about how failures in governance, particularly coup d'etats, have contributed to the problems that your country has faced from violent extremism in the region. So now I'd like to turn to His Excellency Mohammed of the Federal Republic of Somalia. Mr. President, we know that you have recently assessed the security outlook in the Horn of Africa, considering climate shocks, humanitarian issues, conflict, and the threat of violent extremism. How are you reinvigorating the Somali security forces and proactively engaging with the U.S. and international partners to enable Somalia's long-term security? Please share your thoughts with us.
Thank you very much, Jindai. And the question is a very expensive question. It is very large and we cannot because let me try. Somalia has been in a very difficult situation for over 2 decades now, and there are a lot of lessons learned throughout. And in particular, half of this time, the last 15 years, these terrorist groups were in the arena. They were controlling almost the largest portion of Somalia, which is the rural Somalia. 70% of the population of Somalia is living in the rural area as a pastoralists or agro-pastoralists. This is the places where they were controlling Al-Shabaab, getting a lot of revenue, getting a lot of force, manpower, and getting a lot of space to increase their influence, not only in Somalia, but try to in the region as well. So the climate shocks has weakened the society. Poverty, lack of appropriate food, lack of state services that were not reaching the place, all this put together, the communities become very weak and they become very liable to obey the evil actions of the terrorist groups. The composition of the terrorist groups, they are not one, but some of them are there because of that circumstances that has been created by the environmental shocks that were repeatedly taking place in Somalia in recent years. So just to gain, by the end of the month, less than $100, $70, $60 maybe, was enough to recruit a young boy who was recently married and who got a baby or two, who cannot afford to provide one class of milk for his baby, or a young boy who got elderly parents at home who are in need. So that desperation has all of them, they are not there for ideological reasons. The top leadership and the top elite groups are there for ideological reasons. These are there for economic reasons. There are others who are there for grievances, past grievances that they have. And I'm talking about the experience of Somalia, which might be very different from Niger or Burkina or Mali or in other places where terrorists have been challenging. So in that way, the resistance of the community is broken and they become so obedient to that. So it has taken a long time now. And this was a human tendency, that expectation, tomorrow will be better, tomorrow will be better. But tomorrow will be getting worse and worse and worse. Now the people reach to a saturation point where they say, this is not the option. I have been in the office of the presidents in Somalia in 2012 and 2017 in the past. We liberated many parts of Somalia, those areas. We targeted the districts, the towns, and all these places. But unfortunately, when we liberated those places, they were not accessible. These people, they are in the rural areas, they go to the roads, the highways that link the districts, and they put mines, explosives, ambushes, so impossible. Become the road. So because the districts that we liberated in 2013-14 become silos that are standing there, separated, that cannot be connected easily unless you fly from one place to another place. So I lost the elections in early 2017, and I've been out for 5 years. Throughout that 5 years, I've been trying to reflect, of course, not politically, but as a team, a political party, my team, the intellectuals and the groups. So we come to the conclusion that unless we change the mindset of our community, unless we raise the awareness of our community, then this cascading negative effects will continue unless they change. So we started from Shabab cannot be terrorists anywhere they are, cannot be defeated militarily only. Military is a very important component for their defeat. But in the case of Somalia, we decided there are two other important factors, variables that has to be added into the equation, which is ideological war. Shabab we have in Somalia is a faith-based organization. That's what they claim, hiding themselves in Islam, which is not true. So we decided to establish a campaign that will make our people understand these are not what they are propagating is not Islam, and has nothing to do with Islam. They are a group of mafia covering themselves with a blanket of Islam. So the responsibility of the state and the elite group was to uncover this so that the people can see these are not. So that's one area that we started and organized the community. The other way was economic. They were collecting a huge amount of revenue from the local people, closing those tabs of the financial resources with another target. So this three-front war is what's going on in Somalia. And so far, for the last 5 months, what we are receiving is success. It's not yet complete, but it's a success that motivated the people, and it has created a cascading effect and sense among the society. Those who are not liberated yet, even they say now, you see, that party is there and they have liberated themselves. We have to do the same. So this is what is more important now, mobilizing the society. And I have been telling my colleagues today that engaging the society and the community is what makes the terrorists like a fish that run out of water. They cannot exist without the community. And if the community stands up, they have no choice but to run away. And until today, they are running away. Somalia is a large country of 637 square kilometers over. So it's not an overnight business to finish them, but soon we will see and you will hear definitely Somalia without Al-Shabaab. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Your remarks really capture the importance of community-based approaches to security, to governance, and to stability, and how to deliver these democratic dividends. Let me turn now to His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Mozambique. Your Excellency, you heard what the distinguished leaders just highlighted. Both of them have highlighted community-based, they've highlighted the importance of economic dividends to society. How can the dividends of democracy and inclusive governance be enhanced through integration of innovative initiatives to include regional cooperation for peace and security? How can economic and business development levers be used to stabilize communities and sustain peace?
Bom, obrigado. Primeiro, agradecer à administração Biden que nos convida para esta discussão, este diálogo produtivo. Nós temos muitas experiências em Moçambique e de conflitos. Tivemos o primeiro conflito que foi interno, logo depois da nossa independência, e agora estamos com o problema do terrorismo na zona norte da província de Cabo Delgado e também na zona norte de Moçambique. Normalmente, quando surgem problemas como esses, a tendência é procurarmos saber qual é o motivo. E muitas das vezes há estudos que se fazem que dão respostas diferentes, ou talvez a pobreza, ou então a distribuição não justa da riqueza, pobreza também, do desequilíbrio em termos de zonas mais ricas, zonas menos ricas, pessoas mais informadas, etc. Mas para o nosso caso de Moçambique, não sei bem se a pergunta queria atingir o impacto de paz ou não. O que nós estamos a viver agora no norte da província de Cabo Delgado é um terrorismo. É um terrorismo que, quando começou, ninguém tinha experiência na África Austral, nenhum país de SADC tinha sido atingido pelo terrorismo naquele momento. Então, ficamos a saber, é terrorismo, ou um conflito interno, ou qualquer um grupo de ladrões. O tempo foi responsável em trazer a resposta concreta do que se tratava do terrorismo. E como combater o terrorismo? Combater não necessariamente seja só talvez um combate militar. É preciso nós encontrarmos umas motivações para que toda essa gente que está envolvida no sistema possa encontrar o conforto. Infelizmente, o conflito surge na zona onde nós estamos a explorar os hidrocarbonetos, tanto o gás, no norte, na fronteira, quase na fronteira com a Tanzânia, e lá onde estamos os grandes projetos, megaprojetos aqui, Canadá, que havia descoberto lá o gás, que depois passou para a Total, depois a ExxonMobil também está na mesma zona. Então, o que nós fizemos agora, criamos um ambiente onde há envolvimento da região. Neste caso concreto, a SADC, estamos a combater o terrorismo com um exemplo diferente, envolvendo a força multilateral, que é da SADC, mas também a força bilateral com o Ruanda. É um caso único na experiência que temos problemas africanos primeiro de encontrar soluções dentro do próprio continente. Naturalmente, estamos a ser apoiados pela União Europeia, pelos Estados Unidos da América, concretamente na formação, etc. Mas o importante nisto é criar bases para formar mais jovens, ocupar mais jovens, programas comunitários que fazem com que as pessoas fiquem ocupadas e não encontrem a razão, a pobreza como forma de poder aderir à arte do terrorismo. Porque a mensagem que levam esses terroristas tem sido muito simples, é de que vocês estão a sofrer, nós vamos vos dar aquilo que vocês não recebem do governo, então vocês juntem-se a nós para combatermos. Mas normalmente depois não dizem quem, não se sabe quem são. Portanto, para dizer que estamos a capacitar mais as comunidades, capacitar as forças de defesa e segurança, ao mesmo tempo que estamos a lutar em parceria nós com a SADC, através de uma força empenhada que se chama SABIM, também a tropa bilateral de Luanda. Conseguimos recuperar todas as zonas. Agora estamos numa fase de população refugiada, a regressar, e nessa altura que regressa precisa do sustento, nessa altura que regressa precisa de escolas e hospitais que foram destruídas. Portanto, uma atividade conjunta, humanitária, sim senhor, mas criar um movimento de desenvolvimento daquela zona para que toda a gente se sinta igual. Portanto, mais ou menos essa a introdução, e estou disponível para mais questões.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, and thank you for pointing out the important role of partnership, both within the region with SADC and bilaterally, I assume with Rwanda, as well as with the U.S. and the European Union. Partnership is absolutely critical for fighting global terrorism, wherever it shows up in whatever region. So we've heard from our illustrious leaders the challenges and extraordinary commitment it takes at all levels to secure the dividends of peace, stability, and effective governance. Let me turn to one who is no stranger to the complexities of political transitions and the coordination of strategies for peace and security, whether those are between leaders and their societies or across the different communities in societies, the vertical level as well as the horizontal level across these societies. At the African Union, he has played a key role in developing the security architecture to operationalize and sustain stability and good governance. His Excellency, the Right Honorable Musa Ahmed Faki, the Chairperson of the African Union Commission, please, sir, you're cordially invited to come to the stage and to the podium and provide key remarks and recommendations. Please stand and welcome Chairperson Faki to the podium.
Excellences, Monsieur le chef d'État et du gouvernement, Mesdames et Messieurs les ministres, Mesdames et Messieurs, je voudrais d'abord remercier les organisateurs de cet événement. Mes amis, le secrétaire d'État, secrétaire Austin, et ma très chère amie Samantha Paul, administrateur of USAID. Le thème incite à plus d'un titre au questionnement. Nous avons 3 chefs d'État ici, dont les pays font face au terrorisme et à l'extrémisme violent. Le président Bazoum dans la région du Sahel, le président Mohamed Hassan de la Corne de l'Afrique et le président Nyonsi de la zone australe. Il n'est pas sans être une vraie question de réflexion sur les problématiques de la paix, de la démocratie, de la gouvernance et du développement en Afrique. Il est à cet égard utile de partir d'un constat, à savoir la mise en place au niveau de l'Afrique d'un dispositif d'une architecture africaine de paix et de sécurité et d'une architecture africaine de gouvernance. En plus des instruments de base de l'Union africaine, notamment l'acte constitutif, les dispositifs africains qui traitent de ces problématiques n'ont cessé de s'enrichir. On est parti, vous vous souvenez, au début des années 90, de la déclaration d'Alger, de Lomé, contre les changements anticonstitutionnels du gouvernement, à une charte africaine de la démocratie, des élections et de la gouvernance, qui est entrée en vigueur depuis 2011. Jusqu'à tout récemment, il y a quelques mois, nous avons élaboré une déclaration à Accra et qui a été entérinée par un sommet extraordinaire de l'Union africaine au mois de mai dernier à Malawi, notamment sur la lutte contre le terrorisme et la lutte efficace contre les changements anticonstitutionnels du gouvernement. Vous remarquerez qu'aujourd'hui en Afrique, et c'est vraiment un recul par rapport à notre doctrine et à notre pratique, 5 pays africains ont connu des changements non constitutionnels du gouvernement. Le Soudan, le Tchad, le Mali, le Burkina Faso et la Guinée. Ça, c'est un recul terrible dans notre culture. Et donc, l'architecture des paix qui s'est annoncée dès l'origine comme l'expression de notre recherche des solutions africaines aux problèmes africains, nous avons mis en place le Conseil paix et sécurité de l'Union africaine. Nous avons également d'autres institutions comme le panel des sages, les envoyés spéciaux. Et en attendant l'opéralisation d'une force africaine en attente, parce que nous avons des brigades dans les différentes régions africaines, nous avons donc, face à la réalité, notamment du terrorisme, mis en place un certain nombre de missions ad hoc. Au niveau du bassin du lac Tchad, une force mixte multinationale. Au niveau de la Somalie, la MISOM. Au niveau du Mozambique, donc avec le soutien de la SADC et du Rwanda. Nous avons également la force du G5 Sahel. Et récemment, nous avons l'initiative Dakar, qui probablement va également mobiliser des forces pour faire face au terrorisme dans le Golfe de Guinée. Ces mécanismes ont engrangé de bons résultats. Donc la médiation africaine et tout ce qui s'ensuit, nous avons fait des progrès au Soudan, même si les choses se sont reversées par la suite. Nous avons des résultats très probants en Éthiopie qui sont en phase de mise en œuvre. Nous avons mis en place un mécanisme pour soutenir la Libye, notamment dans le processus de réconciliation qui est en cours également. Nous avons également un fonds de la paix qui a quelques 270 millions de dollars pour pouvoir soutenir tous ces processus. Nous avons également au niveau des communautés économiques régionales des mécanismes également qui sont en cours d'opérationnalisation. Alors ce qui se passe actuellement, c'est la question des alternances démocratiques. Les élections se sont organisées dans bon nombre d'États africains, comme l'exemple du Niger qui, malgré les défis sécuritaires, aujourd'hui donne l'exemple d'une alternance démocratique dans notre continent. Nous avons aujourd'hui une société civile exigeante et variée qui s'exprime, même si, il faut le reconnaître, dans des conditions très difficiles. Donc les élites africaines, les peuples africains affirment chaque jour un attachement plus ferme, plus déterminé à l'idéal démocratique et aux droits de l'homme. Pourtant, les difficultés restent des détails et le chemin n'est pas vraiment facile. Je voudrais donc à cet égard faire rapidement 3 observations. La première porte sur les liens intimes qui s'établissent entre le développement et la gouvernance, d'une part, et les facteurs d'instabilité et de menaces de paix, d'autre part. Le constat est frappant. Partout où le déficit de développement inclusif et de gouvernance efficiente a été patent, le terrorisme et les changements anticonstitutionnels se sont répandus. L'étrangeté et cette relation presque incestueuse, permettez-moi le terme, qui se tisse entre les deux flux. Le terrorisme servant de prétexte au changement anticonstitutionnel, lesquels se nourrissent dans le terrorisme et autres facteurs d'instabilité pour justifier leur surveillance et leur pérennité. Cette duplicité ne doit pas être acceptée, elle doit être combattue. La deuxième porte sur l'obsolescence du dispositif mondial du maintien de la paix. Pour être maintenue, la paix doit d'abord exister. Étant donné que les facteurs de menace à la paix a subi de profondes mutations, il est devenu anachronique de rester figé sur le modèle post-Seconde Guerre mondiale de maintien de la paix. Nous en avons plusieurs en Afrique dont les résultats sont à la limite prochainement. La lutte contre le terrorisme, les trafics illégaux de tout genre, la criminalité transfrontalière requiert des modèles opérationnels plus souples, plus efficaces, moins coûteux et plus offensifs. Le modèle actuel ne répond à aucune des caractéristiques. C'est pourquoi il ne faut pas hésiter à réformer le système, voire le transformer de fond en comble. La troisième question, et je voudrais terminer par là, porte sur le financement des opérations de maintien de la paix. Tout le monde reconnaît l'universalité et l'indivisibilité des questions de paix. Pourtant, dans les faits, que se passe-t-il sous nos yeux? Il y a un double standard qui s'est imposé. Tout se passe comme si le terrorisme au bassin du lac Tchad, en Somalie, au Mozambique et dans le golfe de Guinée n'est pas le même terrorisme au Moyen-Orient ou en Asie. Tandis que les coalitions mondiales les plus outillées sont mobilisées autour des alarmes, autour de ces questions, les cris et les alarmes de l'Afrique au sujet de l'extension du fléau restent sans écho. Il est vrai, il faut le reconnaître et s'en féliciter, Les États-Unis soutiennent de façon bilatérale nombre de pays africains. J'en connais, le Niger, Mozambique, Somalie, le Tchad. Mais il faut reconnaître que les armées africaines restent sous-équipées. Samantha, you remember our memorable trip in an old Chadian army helicopter from Jamena to Bongo. It was not safe.
You survived.
Thank you for accepting this. Le financement des missions africaines des paix sur les ressources pérennes des Nations Unies demeure sans suite, malheureusement. Donc voilà la question qui se pose. Cette situation de double standard a des conséquences désastreuses pour l'Afrique et donc pour la paix dans le monde. Servir la démocratie en Afrique, c'est d'abord et avant tout contribuer au rétablissement de la paix en corrigeant ces doubles standards, ces doubles injustices à l'égard de l'Afrique. Avant de conclure, c'est le lieu de mettre l'accent sur les liens dialectiques entre la paix, la sécurité, la bonne gouvernance et le développement. Si notre sommet, Afrique-États-Unis, apporte ne serait-ce qu'un début de réponse à ces questions, il aura été d'un grand succès. Notre débat aujourd'hui aura ainsi assurément une portée pratique mémorable. Je formule le vif espoir qu'il en sera ici. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chairperson Baki. Those were extremely important intervention, particularly drawing attention to the need for a new architecture for global peace, stability, and making the point about the nexus between stability, security, and governance so strongly. We thank you for your intervention and look forward to the United States continuing to work very closely with the African Union, which is taking such a leadership role in supporting peace and stability on the continent. So now let's thank you all again, illustrious leaders, for your comments, and I'd like to turn now to the cabinet secretaries and have them talk a little bit about partnership with Africa and what the United States is doing. And so let me start with Secretary Austin. First, on behalf of all the participants here and those who will be served by this dialogue, let me thank you for DOD's taking the initiative, working with State Department and USAID and the White House to organize this very important forum on governance, peace, and stability. So my first question is, how does DOD security assistance enable a coordinated 3Ds approach of defense, diplomacy, and development to respond to the shared security concerns and threats on the African continent?
Well, first of all, Ambassador, let me say that I'm delighted to be able to join such distinguished leaders today, and also to be joined by my colleagues, Secretary Blinken and Administrator Powell. We're obviously no strangers to each other, because just about every tough problem that we take on and try to address, we are working together. And I'll come back to that in a minute. So we actually live by the 3D model. It is not just a slogan to us, it's who we are and what we do. You know, let me recognize up front the leading role that African countries play in addressing some of the challenges that are most important to the world. And they include climate change, also strengthening democratic institutions and the protection of human rights. It is clear to us that you know, countries across the continent are working hard on those issues and many more on a daily basis. So we recognize and appreciate that. And as we kind of narrow in on some of the most pressing challenges that we're facing, that you are facing today, they include the challenges presented by Russia and China, as well as the transnational terrorist challenge that you know, all of you mentioned earlier, and also climate change. So regarding Russia and China, you know, the PRC, we're witnessing the PRC expand its footprint on the continent on a daily basis, and as they do that, they're also expanding their economic influence. Troubling piece there is that they're not always transparent in terms of what they're doing, and that creates problems that will be eventually destabilizing if they're not already. Turning to Russia, we see Russia continuing to peddle cheap weapons. Some of that was mentioned before by one of our senior leaders here. And also, we see Russia employing mercenaries across the continent, and that is destabilizing as well. And so the combination of those activities by those two countries, I think that bears watching, and certainly I think their influence again can be destabilizing. We've already addressed the challenges in part presented by transnational terrorism. Let me applaud the work that's being done in each of the countries. I think you know that we have a small but persistent footprint in Somalia that's working with the president's forces there and doing a great job empowering his forces to address its most pressing issues. But all three countries are helping us, DoD, by allowing us to base some soldiers or some military there in their countries, and so we appreciate that. We appreciate the help that you continue to provide us. As we approach things on the continent, it's the same way we approach things everywhere. The first thing that we always want to do from a department standpoint is develop the right relationships that will be conducive to promoting stability and security. And as we develop those relationships, we want to listen. We want to listen to what's important to the leaders in the region, in the specific countries, and we want to understand what's really important to you. And going further, we want to make sure that we are doing the things to develop and empower your security forces and help you work on your security architecture in ways that you think benefit you, and that certainly will promote regional stability. So we want to make sure that we're doing the things that you think are important. We want to make sure that we're empowering and enabling your forces to address what you think you need most. And then going beyond that, the next big challenge is, of course, climate change. One of the things that we have done in terms of the United States is we've addressed climate change in our National Defense Strategy, which is our guiding document. And as we interact with other countries, we certainly encourage them to do the same thing, because climate change does a number of things, like causing mass migration in some cases, causing greater competition for resources. We had a great discussion this morning with the President of Niger about the impact of climate change, and it's very, very interesting to hear his insights, because they directly match our insights and our concerns. So, it's very interesting in terms of the interaction of these three things: defense, development, and diplomacy. That's the way we live, but it's fascinating to hear our guests, each one of them, make that case that, security, providing additional security alone won't solve the problem. We really have to do the right things in terms of diplomacy and providing assistance and aid to create the long-standing conditions that we're looking for, the long-standing peace and stability that we're looking for. So, and again, I think the President of Somalia made that case very well, as he said, we addressed this with security forces initially, but that did not stand, it won't stand unless you go back and address the underlying currents. So, defense, in most cases, can set the conditions so that Samantha can come in with the right capabilities to do the right things in terms of development, and clearly it enables Secretary Blinken to come in and do the right things in terms of diplomacy. I don't ever want to see a day when we're not resourcing our diplomats to the full extent that they need to be resourced, because that's going to make me buy more bullets. Because you can't solve every problem with a military solution, and certainly if you're not addressing the long-standing, long-term issues, whatever solution you put into place will not prevail. So this is a way of life for us, and we think it's a way that you have to do business, and it's certainly the approach we're taking on the continent. And I want to applaud all the leaders who are here who have embraced that concept as well.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Secretary Austin. And again, the organization of this forum and the leadership of DOD in making this happen is a real testament to that commitment to the continent and to the 3P approach. Secretary Blinken, you've been at the forefront at calling for a shift from reactive and often crisis-driven security approaches in Africa to collaborative and sustainable strategies. President Bazoum has discussed how Niger is confronting immediate and serious threats from terrorism, climate, and extreme poverty, while simultaneously safeguarding the long-term future of his country. Can you speak to the linkage between building and sustaining democratic institutions and good governance and realizing long-term peace and prosperity? What can be practically done through U.S. partnerships?
Thank you very, very much. And first, it's really an honor to share this platform with the three presidents and also with my friend, the Chairman Faki. They are each evidence of the difference that leadership can make in tackling these challenges. And really, I want to pick up from where Lloyd left off and also reflect on some of the things that I heard our colleagues say that I took note of. Look, I think the link between actually having sustainable peace and sustainable opportunity and development, good governance, and institutions is very clear. The real question is how to get there. And how to get there, in effect, when, as our friend from Niger said, you're trying to do it while you're flying the plane at 60,000 feet. And you're trying to do it at a time when virtually all of the challenges we face are interconnected and unfortunately reinforcing each other. And we just heard Lloyd talk about this and others talk about this, whether it is the combination of climate, food insecurity, energy insecurity, that in different ways drive migration, drive fights over resources, drive conflict. All of these things reinforcing each other. The challenge for governance is to be able to deal with them effectively in the moment, but at the same time, get the balance right so that we're also dedicating resources, time, and attention to trying to build a stronger foundation of good governance, of strong institutions, of development, not simply emergency humanitarian response. That's what makes peace sustainable. That's what makes opportunity real. So I think one of the things that we're driving at as we're thinking about this with our African colleagues is how do we do this more effectively in partnership with Africa. You heard Secretary of Defense say this, the solutions that are made just in the United States are not likely to be sustainable. We're focused on listening to our partners. What are their needs? What are local requirements? How do we build together on that basis? That's one critically important thing, and it animates everything we're doing. Second, we're looking at making genuine investments because, again, a response to the immediate is necessary, but it is insufficient and it's not a long-term solution. We're dealing now with a massive food insecurity crisis. It's the product of a lot of things, as we all know. It's the product of climate change. It's the product of COVID. It's a product, unfortunately, of conflict, including Russia's aggression against Ukraine. And so we have an immediate emergency response, especially as we're looking at historic, alas, droughts in different places. We're looking at famine conditions in a number of countries, and the United States has been leading the way on that. But what I've heard time and again, especially talking to African colleagues, we brought together leaders from around the world back in May at the Security Council when we were in the presidency of the Security Council, and focused on food insecurity. And in a session that I had with African colleagues, the thing I heard again and again and again is, yes, we need to address the emergency situation, but what we want even more is a genuine investment in our own productive capacity, in our own self-sufficiency. So that's driving, for example, the Feed the Future program. driving a lot of the work that we're doing around the world. Same thing on global health. We've gone through this pandemic, and what we know from that is it's insufficient simply to deal with the immediate challenge. We have to help put in place and have to help Africa put in place the foundations to be able to deal with that themselves going forward, so that there's not a reliance on others to build the capacity. So we've helped establish from South Africa to Senegal the capacity to, for example, produce vaccines in Africa for Africans. We're investing in young people. As everyone knows, the majority of the population in Africa is young. We have been going back to initiatives that President Obama started, invested in young African leaders. There are now 700,000 young Africans who are part of the YALI network virtually. It's incredibly powerful because it's building connections between them, among them, and building out partnerships for the future. A big piece of this is the investments we're making in women and girls, something we can talk about at greater length. And then finally, I would say that, there's no one model of good governance. There's no one model for how to build strong institutions. I think we have to be informed by each other. We have to be informed by local conditions, local needs. And from the perspective of the United States, this is also not about a competition with others. This is not about saying to our friends and partners, you have to choose. This is about offering a genuine choice, offering a genuine partnership, and hopefully together building a race to the top, not a race to the bottom. That's what we're animated by. We put out a strategy for Sub-Saharan Africa a few months ago, and it really does bring together the three pieces that are represented here. The last thing I'll say is this. It's interesting, when you're in the Situation Room, as you know very well, oftentimes the diplomats are saying, gosh, we could use a little bit more defense and security, or a little bit more development. And then the Secretary of Defense is saying, we need some more diplomacy to deal with this. And so we're constantly playing off of each other, but it's really increasingly in response to what we're hearing from our friends, from our colleagues, from our partners. That's what's animating us. That's the only way I think we're going to be successful in building this plane as our friends are flying at 60,000 feet.
Yes, thank you very much, Secretary Blinken. Thank you very much for putting the emphasis on the quality of the partnership, the content of that partnership, the nature of that partnership, and what the United States is doing to build it with all of Africa. Now let's turn to administrative power. Many countries, including those represented in this session, face diverse challenges that contribute to uncertainty and ripen the environment for instability and conflict. We've heard about those already, including economic crisis, food insecurity, governance challenges, and a fracturing of social cohesion. USAID is demonstrating an early commitment to partnerships and development as an essential component of a holistic, integrated response. How has this approach been applied in areas to prevent the further spread of instability, and what lessons have been learned to prevent the spread of violence and extremism?
Thank you so much, Tendai, and thank you for your work over so many years in this space. I mean, it's evident today, your fluency in these issues, but you've really put it all on the line in your career, and so thank you. And thanks, so honored to be among these heads of state who are leading in this space and bringing a more holistic and integrated approach themselves, recognizing the impossibility of silos. Chairman Faki, about that helicopter, you said it was safe at the time. So I'm not sure now, nearly 20 years later, I'm getting the memo that that wasn't quite the case. And just to underscore what Secretary Blinken, Secretary Austin has stressed, which is the inextricable links and the inextricability of these issues, development, diplomacy, defense. I often talk about it like a three-legged stool, where you can have economic opportunity, if you're lucky, and governance, you can aspire to those things, but if you don't have security, the stool is going to topple over. You can have security and hope for economic opportunity for all these young people on the continent, but if you don't have governance, it's going to make it very challenging to sustain security and economic gains. so too, there absolutely has to be an economic dividend on security consolidation and on governance, when you have leaders in place who are trying to deliver for their people. I just wanted to make 3 points here beyond that. The first is on the centrality of governance. And I think it's really important we heard from the chairman the reference not only to Africa's peace and security architecture, but the recognition of the connection between security and the anti-coup policy that the African Union has taken for so long. The recognition that norms and standards and justice in the wake of conflict or in the wake of atrocities, how important that is, how challenging it has been to deliver, but nonetheless that standard setting is so important from the UN, but also especially closer to home from the AU. So thank you for your leadership on that. It's so, so important. But when you think about the vicious cycle of the relationship between governance and security as it tends to play out. So let's say you get lackluster governance, there's corruption, a government may have not come to power legitimately or may have extended itself in perpetuity. Popular discontent rises, maybe people come out to the streets. In a situation where the rule of law is shaky, or you see democratic backsliding, what is the first tool in circumstances like that? Often, security forces taking a heavy hand with the people who are coming out, wanting more for themselves, more for their kids. Then what happens if a crowd is fired on? This has happened in so many countries, in so many parts of the world, certainly not just in Africa. There tends to be the excessive use of force, not the accountability around the excessive use of force. Does that ever work, really? I mean, do people really ever go, well, maybe then it's a more heavy-handed approach, but more likely more people come out to the streets. Then, here we are with initiatives like Prosper Africa, trying to gin up enthusiasm among the diaspora to bring their businesses back home to Africa, to try to attract private sector investment. The Development Finance Corporation, which both state and USAID, our state is the chair of the board of the DFC, USAID is the vice chair, trying to hustle up patient capital. And yet, what happens when you start to see that doom loop with governance, the excessive use of force, it just gets harder and harder. And same with corruption. Fundamentally, it's not something that can be pushed off to the side if we're serious about drawing the kind of economic investment that we want to see on the continent. That too has to just be so central to the governance agenda, to the rule of law. So just to say, everything is connected to everything else, but it's very hard to see our way out of security conundrums and economic difficulties of the kind we see today without governance reform, of the kind that I think the leaders up here are championing, and others are as well, but we have to be honest, the trends are not great. And many say, oh, but in tough economic times, governance can wait. If we're going to address these economic headwinds, these issues have to be tackled in parallel. Second point, just very briefly, is we do tend to ask the question about programming around extremism and conflict resolution and so forth. We have a lot of programming branded as such, but I think the way we have to approach it at USAID is in this much more holistic way. I mean, Tony mentioned Feed the Future, our flagship billion-dollar food security program, which is about helping farmers get access to satellite data from NASA so they know the quality of their soil, giving them seeds, drought-resistant seeds, heat-resistant seeds, so they can better withstand climate change. I mean, that's an investment in counter-extremism. Fundamentally, that's about livelihoods, that's about economic opportunity, it's about withstanding the effects of climate change. PEPFAR, flagship program, that's an investment fundamentally in preventing radicalization. Remember when life expectancy in so many countries was in the mid-30s for some, in some communities? That was not, I remember actually DOD coming out and speaking about HIV/AIDS and the threat actually posed to security because life is so short and so fleeting in those circumstances. So and climate change programming. You cannot talk about any of the issues, and everybody has touched upon this in some way, but as these pastoralist livelihoods shrink and shrivel up, and we ask major questions now about the sustainability of that lifestyle in places where it has lived and thrived for millennia. You know, our efforts together to partner with you, follow your lead to figure out what is the transition for those communities now, how do we bring that about? So it's just that we can't think about security programming and counter-extremism programming without thinking about the ecosystem, and President Bazoum mentioned the ecosystem of tension, but really it's the ecosystem of development that has to envelop communities that are grappling with these really, really difficult circumstances right now in many cases, and it has so much dynamism and potential that just needs to be unlocked. Third and final point is just to end by, because I was just in Somalia visiting the president and his team not so long ago, a couple months ago, where again the country is facing fifth straight failed rainy season, breaking all records, potentially heading into a sixth. This is the climate. And it's even to say shock anymore, I'm not sure. I think a shock has to be this, but when a shock is a constant, I'm not sure it counts as a shock anymore, but this perennial climate drain on the entrepreneurship and dynamism, again, of the people of Somalia, the people of all the countries that we've been talking about here. And yet, against that very, very difficult backdrop, to see the security forces with Secretary Austin's team's support, to see the diplomacy that you have done, Mr. President, coming out and saying, we will be at peace first with our neighbors and with ourselves. We will be at peace with our neighbors and ourselves, I love that. And to have the Secretary's team backing that up, trying to coordinate donors who are going, as always, in a million directions, rather than necessarily, squaring up our investments with your needs, which is what we must be doing. But as you have launched these successful military operations, the point you make again and again, how critical it is to come in and make sure that there is livelihood support. What is stabilization? Yes, stabilization is security for sure, but it's again 3 Ds, and it's those 3 legs of the stool. And so figuring out as a broader international community that wishes to see an end to radicalism and an end to Al-Shabaab and an end to the terrorist groups that are terrorizing so many innocents in these countries and beyond, it is going to take bringing all tools in the toolbox together at the right time and not missing opportunities like those that exist when the defense and the diplomacy come together. And so that is, our need is not only to do it ourselves with our resources, which we are doing, but to get other countries to see that this is an opening, and it can be proof of concept for how it can be done elsewhere, but we have to seize that opening. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Administrator Power. Thank you very much for your engagement and your leadership of USAID. We know how much the men and women of USAID are doing on the ground in Africa, and they are often the first face of the U.S. policy, U.S. diplomacy, U.S. development, all of it. So thank you very much for your leadership. Now we have just about 10 minutes left, and I'm going to do something that is dangerous, but I want to do it in terms of time management. I would like to give the leaders at least 1 minute each to reflect on anything that you think is necessary in terms of the partnership and engagement that you just heard from your hosts, our cabinet secretaries. But please, just 1 minute or else I'm in trouble. So we'll start with President Nayisi. Nayisi, please.
Bom, muito obrigado, eu ofereci mais 5. Mas eu queria dizer que é importante este momento que estamos a ter, que estamos a avaliar, porque é preciso investir para a paz, é preciso investir para o desenvolvimento também, é preciso investir para a democracia ou a boa governança. E para tal, nós não esperemos os resultados daquilo que esteja a acontecer para a África, para a Ásia, para a Europa, mas no momento exato vamos tendo aqui também debates sobre investimentos diretos para a economia. E esses investimentos devem tocar o capital humano, vão ser fundamentais para estabilizar os países, para desenvolver mais os homens e dos homens no sentido de bem-estar. Eu penso que eu poderia dar a minha contribuição nesse sentido. Obrigado.
Thank you very much. President Johann.
Yeah, I'm not far away from, as the President said, investing in the human capital. Investing in peace is true, but investing in human capital is the best option. And this is a very serious challenge to Africa, particularly where the fiscal capability or the revenue capability is very limited. Providing service delivery to the people, increasing the quality of education and health, and issues like that is very investing in the civil society groups. These are the issues where changing the mindset of the society is the fundamental issue. That's the bottom, that if you push, so many things will change. And I think it is the people who we need to concentrate. How do we change the mindset of the people?
Thank you, sir. President Bazoum, please.
Merci, madame. Moi, je n'aurais pas insisté plus que je ne l'ai fait sur la qualité de notre coopération militaire avec les États-Unis, s'agissant de la sécurité qu'il faut encore renforcer. J'ai souligné deux défis auxquels nous sommes confrontés, c'est celui du changement climatique. C'est une question qu'on ne peut pas traiter que dans le cadre d'une relation bilatérale avec un pays, fils les États-Unis, qui ont de grandes capacités. Ces discussions que nous menons dans le cadre du débat international sur le changement climatique commandent que les États-Unis interviennent de tout leur poids pour faire en sorte que les pays comme les nôtres qui ont besoin de promouvoir l'agriculture, parce que nous avons beaucoup de ressources en eau, puissent accéder au crédit qui nous permettrait vraiment de pouvoir disposer des énergies renouvelables de façon conséquente. Enfin, c'est l'éducation chez nous. Il faut vraiment une mobilisation générale pour promouvoir l'éducation et lutter contre le phénomène de la croissance démographique. Il faut instruire les filles, il faut faire en sorte que nos filles aillent à l'école, durent à l'école, pour que cette dérive dans laquelle nous sommes d'une croissance débridée de la démographie qui ruine toutes nos chances de pouvoir assurer le développement dans notre pays soit bien pris en charge. Voilà.
Thank you, Mr. President. And this has really been an excellent dialogue. Just to end with a couple of the highlights, the necessity of good governance to counter violent extremism with an implication that the coup regimes will fail to deliver security and peace. Another one is that international partnership is key to support African security capability, with the implication that there is a requirement for innovation and an alignment with Africa's priorities. And then finally, inclusive development is a required ingredient for stability and can be accelerated by regional cooperation and strong quality international partnerships. Please join me in thanking the leaders and the secretaries for, again, such an outstanding dialogue. It is the middle of the dialogue because I know all of them have already been engaging. This now includes all of this forum, and then we'll continue to carry it forward. Thank you very much.
Alexa, what are the latest news from the Caribbean Television Network?
From Caribbean Television Network News. Even in his inability to lead, Ariel Henry enjoys the support of the United States. From Zoom Haiti News Daily. The Assistant Secretary of State for International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs, Todd D. Robinson, reiterated the United States' support for the Haitian government in the fight against insecurity.
Zoom Haiti News, français. L'ex-ministre de l'Agriculture, des Ressources naturelles et du Développement rural, David Nicolas, est mort.
En Zoom Haiti News Español, el gobierno de Biden agradece la colaboración de las autoridades haitianas en la gestión del expediente de migrantes irregulares.
Zoom Haiti News et Caribbean Television Network, plus de 10 sites internet, en anglais, français, espagnol et plus d'une centaine d'autres langues. Désormais, vous n'avez plus besoin d'un ordinateur ou d'un téléphone portable. Il suffit de demander à Alexa.
Alexa, what are the latest news from the Caribbean Television Network?
From Caribbean Television Network News. From Zoom Haiti News Daily.
En Zoom Haiti News, français.
En Zoom Haiti News Español.
Caribbean Television Network, en français, anglais et espagnol. Vous pouvez aussi télécharger les applications de Zoom Haiti News en créole, français, anglais et espagnol. Visitez notre site internet sur www.caribbeantelevisionnetwork.com. Chaque jour, branchez Zoom Haiti News avec Caribbean Television Network sous Roku et Amazon TV Fire. Ou nous tous sous ZHN Live avec CNT Live dans Roku et Amazon TV Fire. Ou pas gain télévision? Al droite sous Apple Store ou bien Google Store, téléchargez l'application Roku. L'offre télécharger l'application ça, ou chercher ZHN Live. Ou joindre même channel ça tout dans Amazon TV Fire. Pas hésiter à abonner à la chaîne YouTube nous. Et puis suivez nous tous sur Facebook dans Zoom Haiti News à Caribbean Television Network.
La jeunesse vient tande. Yo dit Covid allé, mais c'est pas vrai. Virus là, l'a muté, l'a transformé et l'a continué vers le terrain. L'a évolué rapidement et c'est nous toutes qui pour mobiliser pour nous couper coronavirus ça. On nous continue à prendre toutes mes précautions nous te kan prend déjà yo. Si vous pas vacciné, al prend vaccin. Si vous te prend des premières doses, al prend booster. Toujours songer mettre masque. Lavez-moi souvent. Évitez en l'enfoule sous déjà un problème santé. Renforcer le système immunitaire, respecter consignes CDC et recommandations fait dans l'état côté ou vivre là. Coronavirus là li nan mitan nous toujours. Li pas obligé fatal. Alors c'est mettre corps qui pouvait corps. Message ça, c'est United Front of the Haitian Diaspora qui porte pour nous en conjonction avec aucun chaîne de travail à faire avec Morehouse School of Medicine. Pour plus d'informations, visitez site internet yo dans www.haitianunitedfront.org ou ncrn.msm.edu ou bien reléon dans 202 918 69 92.